D&D players of Reddit, what is the most creative character you've seen someone play as? There was a campaign where the party came across a magical cauldron filled with boiling gold. They were told they could drop an item in and it would be turned to gold while retaining all of its other properties and be imbued with intelligence. They were warned that the intelligence might be malevolent. While the party debated what to drop in, the gnome rogue jumps in. He became gold coated, which increased his armor class significantly, but also became cursed with an evil alter ego. There was much rolling to determine when and for how long he was forced to play as chaotic evil. I have never played D&D, but that sounds awesome. I've got a friend who is a weird character machine. Most recently is an orc named Sterig who believes that weapons are a coward's weapon and beats people to death with his shields. Before that was Robert the Destroyer, a barbarian who threw ladders at people. There was $3.50 or $3.50 to his friends. A really creepy monk who could shoot vines out of his hands like Spider-Man. And of course Justin Chandler, a shaman who saved literally all his gold till level 7. Then used it to permanently enlarge and awaken his pet frog and deck it out with sweet gear. Then used it to permanently enlarge and awaken his. Was not expecting frog here. I once kidnapped a player character wizard and replaced them with a higher level illusion created by the BBEG. The player then had to control the illusion from the perspective of the BBEG, pretending to still be a member of the party. It was surprisingly effective. Just as they reached the BBEG, they were slowly realizing he wasn't helping much anymore. I played as a Wemmick back in college and I loved that character. He was a druid and thus could only carry wooden weapons. So after thinking about it, I gave him a lance, and then proceeded to get every featuring guy I could for a night on horseback, trample, charges, etc. I leveled like a monster class instead of a player class, aka slow as balls, but man, it was a hella fun character. He could do some insane damage by the end of the game, and if he had to get into close combat, he could do rake bite for damage. My favorite part, though, were his two animal companions. The first was a weasel that took levels of thief, so it was our trap dismantler, and it eventually had vorpal front teeth, so it had a devastating bite attack. The second was, and I'm not kidding, a giant white blood cell. It had been magicked out of a giant and made even larger, and it rode around on my druid's back. As the group's healer, it would blob onto them and heal them with a few levels of cleric. Mind you, my druid was teamed up with the lizardman barbarian who was surprisingly smart, and the fey bard that would drink anything put in front of him, which is how he ended up as a half-elf woman of a different alignment by the end of the game. Two people in our group independently chose to name themselves Han and Hien. Han decided to run with it, and named his horses Hone and Huan, and his familiar Hien. It was all very confusing, but totally worth it when our DM introduced an NPC whose nickname was Hawaiian, aka sometimes Hawaiian. A camel. Not just any camel, but a racing camel named Rocket Boots. We had a party member who was inconsistent about showing up for the games, and he showed up in the middle of a short campaign we were running after we had retrieved a stolen racing camel. It's hard to say exactly what it was, but the guy went ham role-playing this camel, making camel noises and doing camel things. It was absolutely hilarious. I haven't done it yet, but I've always wanted to play as a true polymorph chair. The chair was turned into a human, or any player race, and then started learning, maybe becoming a wizard himself. I don't know how anyone would ever know, since the change becomes permanent, but if he ever walked through an anti-magic field, he would just turn back into a chair and be gone forever, and no one else would walk through there for fear of being turned into a chair. I played with a 100% randomly generated character. I had a decent combo of class and race, half elf and ranger, but my stats were completely dysfunctional for a ranger. My worst stats by far were dex and wisdom. In fact, they were the worst in the group. I was the ranger that could do everything a ranger was not supposed to do, and nothing that a ranger was actually supposed to do. One of my friends also did this. We were playing a custom campaign with no magic, and his name was Milhouse Rodriguez. The only words he knew in the common tongue were "I am sneak boy" and "frick you." He was a 6'10" 350 pounds rogue with no points and dex. He preferred to pick his enemies up and throw them. OCD druid with bag of holding, would clean up battlefields and other places using the bag as a dustbin. Was hilarious halfway through the campaign when the druid used the bag as a ballistic weapon and emptied said bag. My current campaign is made entirely from characters who are new to D&D, myself included, so when building characters, my friend rolled mostly average stats with the exception of intelligence, so he has a -3 in that, so we basically determined that he's illiterate. During our campaign, he also referred to the DM as God as a joke, and he kept asking questions like, "Alright God, what do we do about?" So I made a joke that it looks like his character is actually communicating with God on a regular basis, but everyone around him just thinks he's insane, and will never believe him. He then got the personality trait, Divine Guidance, which allows him to have a helpful hint once per campaign session, so canonically, his character can communicate with God, but to everyone else he's just talking to himself as a result of his intellectual ineptitude. Jesus gives military advice +20. I haven't seen it myself, but someone over at Ardengreen Text posted his story about a gnome and a half-orc. The gnome had the mount skill, and sitting on the orc's shoulders they were both invincible. Would love to play with that idea sometime. A player made a dwarf who was actually a human midget raised by dwarfs. He was a barbarian and was modeled after Macho Man Randy Savage. He had a pet Wolverine which he would throw at people while screaming the fastball special. Then Wolverine didn't last too long. Randy throughout the campaign slowly went insane due to his fear of magic. Randy that began cutting off people's hands for no apparent reason. The legend of Macho Man ended when he attempted to suplex a dragon. As someone who once spent several hours making the closest thing to a 1-to-1 equivalent of Macho Man in 5e, this makes me very happy. Narcoleptic Bard, currently in a campaign with this one. He doesn't do much, and has the tendency to fall asleep at the worst times. My current campaign has a monk who has a tendency to meditate through important battles, so I think I know the feeling. A lizard wizard, not a cool, humanoid one, a gecko which could occasionally spat sparks. A friend of mine decided to be a smartass and play a character named Gok Cobbler, so yeah, the DM decided to play along and has made a good portion of our campaign revolve around the secret society of cobblers and their ancient feud with their enemies the haberdashers. There are a lot of magic shoes and magic hats. There's also a masterworked rifle named Blood Faucet that might be cursed to seek haberdasher souls. This sounds heavily influenced by an Adam Sandler movie. Did a minute's max build to create a damage monster of a fighter, had to shortchange him in certain areas as far as wisdom and intelligence goes. I realized this was a bad idea the 3rd or 4th time I died during a single session because Brick had trouble realizing what was dangerous and what was not. Eventually the cleric just tied a rope around his neck and led him around. That seemed to help a lot. Brick, I killed a guy with a trident. Personally, the most creative I've seen was a tiefling warlock who was constantly disguising himself as an elf cleric. All of the players, out of character, knew what he was, but he had the whole party, in character, convinced. And between his high charisma and the rest of the party's low intelligences, it didn't seem likely to change anytime soon. I once read about a barbarian who would constantly yell encouragements and slap you when you go down. It was a paladin, sneakily casting his buff and heal spells. A thief with 1 level of illusionist that passed himself off as an archwizard, throwing fireballs and screaming these beasts are immune to magic in a fight was a funny experience. He was good at scamming NPCs though. I'm currently DMing for a group with an armless wild magic sorcerer. It has made for some interesting and funny situations. 3 dwarfs stacked in a trench coat. Upon meeting the character there is a roll to see if they think the character is normal or see the 3 dwarfs stacked. The whole character is a bit of a joke at the same time oddly works. Each character is its own class and depending on the stack order things change. Also one is Guy Fieri as a dwarf for no good reason. Guy also has the adventure chef class. Simon and Garfunkel. It was just for a one shot so I don't remember all the details. I believe Simon was a gnome wizard, and Garfunkel was a Goliath fighter, or some other large race. Simon was a murderous psychopath that Garfunkel had accidentally paralyzed at some point in the past, to the point where Simon can't even speak, so he carries Simon around like a baby out of guilt, caring for him and protecting him. Simon's entire existence is seethed with rage, usually trying to kill Garfunkel and those around him, but always failing. with Garfunkel being completely unaware of Simon's burning hate for him. Oh, Meek is dead. I accidentally stomped on him on the bridge. I just feel so guilty. I've been carrying him all day. Dwarf pirate that wanted to retire and become a farmer. I made my DM research cost of land, animals, reproduction rates and such. I love my farm more than adventuring. Simple solution. Commandeer a ship, kill all but one man, train him for 5 years under the constant daily threat of death, and then have him adopt your character's name and take over as captain, with a new crew of course so no one knows. My girlfriend has made a character for our next campaign that is an elf fighter, but is only good at fighting when he is drunk. When he is not drunk he is lawful evil and a bit of a scholar. When he is drunk he rips off his shirt to reveal his muscles and becomes chaotic good. One of my players was playing as an earth elemental cleric. They were sailing to some faraway island when everybody was dicking around, and they knocked said cleric into the ocean. Of course he didn't float and sank straight to the bottom. Couldn't drown either, technically. It took the players 3 sessions of underwater themed adventures to finally get him rescued, because he had spent so much time under immense pressure on the ocean floor. He came out as a lava elemental, and now he can't set foot in wooden buildings, and nobody can touch him without taking burn damage. If the players wind up in a particularly cold environment, they just crowd around him for warmth now, which means they don't need to build campfires anymore. Unfortunately, he is incredibly bright at night, and has a -7 stealth modifier. Get someone unfamiliar with D&D role-playing games to read this and see how they react. Didn't experience this firsthand, but my brother once played as a rogue assassin who had had his tongue removed, so he couldn't speak in an intelligible manner. Everyone he tried to talk with, including party members, had to make a roll to see if they understood him. Luckily, one of his party members rolled a nat 20 on his first attempt, so the DM ruled that they would always be able to understand each other. My DM insists we all talk in character, so I spend Tuesday nights playing a turtle with a bad Swedish accent. I play a turtle monk in our games. Most sessions I barely even attack and am more used as a battering ram. GM. The party can feel wind coming from behind this wall. Roll perception to discover a switch. Me. I weigh 500 pounds. I run into the wall full sprint. This has worked so many times at this point I think he just plans on it. A necromancer who thought they were a cleric. Only the player and DM knew and had a list translating what the player said they were doing and what they were actually doing, i.e. spells, daily prep, so the others wouldn't catch on out of character. In his formative years he came upon a book of forbidden spells. Being young and stupid he assumed it was a book of divine rituals. Fast forward several years and he wanders the land preaching about the everlasting life. He's skilled in first aid and potions because not every scrape requires divine intervention but has some spells that will bring someone back from the brink of death. He also has a bodyguard who wears full plate who follows him around because he owes a life debt. Doesn't talk much though. The other players never discussed removing their own armor, or eating, or using the toilet, so nobody found it odd that the NPC never did. The other players also never took points in knowledge arcane to discover the spell effects didn't match what they should. I've always wanted to play as a secret necromancer, where the party doesn't know I'm a necromancer and I'm doing everything in my power to keep it that way but still practice necromancy. This might be that way. In my current campaign one of my players is a mimic chess named Chester. He loves the character and has so much fun hopping around biting people. I had a player play a dwarf bard named Anus, pronouns are, Noose, but he let his close friends call him Anus. Anus carried around his instrument everywhere he went, a freaking didgeridoo. He was able to charm animals using his didgeridoo.
Oh, hey, don't mind me. I'm just working hard on the next Dude Man video. Hey, by the way, if you want more awesome content like this, you should check that channel out. What you should want to watch more awesome content. Then head on over to Dude Man. I'm Lunar Steve and I'm the host over there. Go give it a look. I hope you like what you see.